Most people think blizzards are dangerous because of the cold. They're wrong. The cold just hides the real threat. The silence, the isolation, and the things that only move when the world turns white. Tonight, these are 3 true-feeling stories from people who were alone during a blizzard and realized something else was out there with them. I grew up in North Dakota, so blizzards were never a novelty. They were just part of winter, white noise to our lives. You learned early how to read the sky, how to keep blankets and flares in your car, how to respect the cold without fearing it. That's why what happened 3 winters ago still doesn't make sense to me. It was early January, just after sunset, when my phone buzzed with an emergency alert warning of a sudden whiteout. I was already on Highway 52, about 40 minutes from home, driving back from a late shift. The forecast that morning had been clear. No warning, no buildup, just calm, and then chaos. Within minutes, the wind hit hard enough to shove my car sideways. Snow slammed into the windshield like gravel. Visibility dropped to nothing. No road, no sky, no horizon. Just white. I slowed to a crawl, gripping the wheel, heart pounding. Then the engine sputtered once and died. I tried again. Nothing. No cell service. Of course. I sat there for a moment, listening to the wind scream around the car, feeling the cold seep in. Then I remembered the rule drilled into us since childhood. Stay with the vehicle. So that's what I did. I wrapped myself in blankets from the trunk, cracked the window slightly for air, and waited. Minutes stretched into something heavier. Time felt thick, like it was sinking. That's when I saw the footprints. They appeared out of nowhere. Dark impressions forming in the snow beside my driver's side door. Perfectly spaced. Barefoot. At first, I told myself they had to be old, left over from someone stranded earlier. But the storm was violent. Anything exposed would have been erased instantly. Yet these prints were sharp, fresh, and they stopped right at my window. I held my breath, staring into the white void outside. I couldn't see anyone, just the howling storm and those footprints leading up to me, and nowhere else. No return trail. I locked the doors, even though I knew how stupid that was. Whatever was out there could break a window if it wanted. Still, it made me feel less exposed. A few minutes passed. Then I heard knocking. Not pounding, not frantic. 3 slow taps on the glass. I didn't move. The knocking came again, a little firmer this time, followed by something that made my stomach drop. Breathing. Right outside my window. Not labored, not panicked. Calm, steady, patient. I squeezed my eyes shut and counted. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I didn't acknowledge it, it would leave. When I opened my eyes, the footprints were gone. I convinced myself I was hallucinating. Hypothermia can do that. Stress, fear, anything to keep my mind from snapping. An hour passed, maybe 2. Then my radio crackled to life. Static at first, then a voice. Miles marker, 52. Anyone out there? I nearly cried from relief. I grabbed the mic and answered immediately, my voice shaking as I gave my location. There was a pause. Then the voice said, "Good. Don't leave your vehicle." I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. "We're on our way," the voice continued. "Whatever you hear outside, ignore it." My blood ran cold. I asked what they meant. The radio went silent. That's when the scratching started. Not at the door, not at the windows. Under the car. Long, dragging sounds, like fingernails tracing metal. Slow circles beneath me, moving from front to back, back to front. The car rocked slightly, as if something were testing its weight. I curled into myself, whispering prayers I hadn't said since childhood. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but run where? Into what? Then the scratching stopped. Silence fell so abruptly my ears rang. I looked up just in time to see a face press against the windshield. Not frozen, not blue. Warm. Its eyes were open, impossibly wide, pupils blown out, lips curled into a smile that didn't belong on a human face. Snow clung to its hair, but its skin was flushed, alive. It mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then it tilted its head and slid away into the storm. I don't remember much after that. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. Hypothermia, dehydration, exposure. They said a snowplow found my car buried almost completely. No footprints, no damage, no explanation. When I asked the state trooper who interviewed me about the radio message, his expression changed. There were no active units on that channel that night, he said, and no calls came in from your location. I don't drive that highway anymore, and every winter, when the snow starts falling fast and the world goes white, I still hear slow, patient knocking in my dreams. 3 taps, waiting for me to answer. The town of Red Willow barely exists on most maps. 1 gas station, 1 diner, a scattering of houses tucked into the plains of eastern Montana. In winter, the road in and out becomes a suggestion more than a guarantee. I was 22 when I took the night security job at the grain elevator just outside town. It paid better than anything else around, and the work was simple. Sit in a heated shack, monitor cameras, and call it in if anyone tried to steal fuel or equipment. The night the blizzard came, I was halfway through my shift. At around 11:40 p.m., the wind changed. That's the only way I can describe it. One moment it was quiet enough to hear the hum of the generator. The next, it was screaming so loud the walls vibrated. Snow began hitting the shack sideways, blotting out the floodlights. The weather radio squawked to life with a delayed warning. Ground blizzard, 0 visibility, shelter immediately. Too late. Within minutes, the road back to town vanished. My truck was only 50 yards away, but I couldn't see it anymore. The security shack suddenly felt very small. I locked the door and checked the cameras. Most of them were just white static, snow blowing directly into the lenses. But camera 3, mounted high on the elevator itself, still had a clear view of the loading platform. That's where I saw him. A man stood at the far edge of the concrete pad, facing the building. No coat, no hat, just a thin flannel shirt snapping violently in the wind. He wasn't moving. At first, I assumed he was drunk or suicidal. I reached for the radio to call it in, but something stopped me. His footprints didn't trail off behind him. They ended where he stood, as if he'd been placed there. I leaned closer to the monitor. The man's head turned sharply toward the camera, like he knew I was watching. The feed cut to static. At that exact moment, someone knocked on the shack door. One knock, firm, controlled. I froze. Nobody could have crossed that open ground in those conditions without being seen. And no one in their right mind would be out there without winter gear. The knock came again. Then a voice. "Hey!" it called, muffled by the storm. "You got a phone in there?" The voice sounded normal, young, friendly. That scared me more than anything else. I answered through the door, telling him to step back so I could see him through the window. He didn't respond. Instead, he knocked again, harder. "I'm freezing," he said. "Please." I glanced at the cameras. Camera 3 was back. The platform was empty. Slowly, very slowly, I looked back at the door window. A shadow passed over it. Not walking, sliding. The handle began to twist. I backed away, grabbing the emergency flare gun from the wall. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The voice changed. "Open the door," it said, the words stretched unnaturally long. "You don't need it anymore." I screamed into the radio, calling for help, for anyone. Static answered. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out. In the darkness, something began circling the shack. I could hear boots crunching in the snow, but always just out of sight, never stopping, never getting closer or farther away. Then I heard scratching. Not at the door, at the walls. All of them. Dozens of fingernails, tracing the metal siding in slow, deliberate lines. I don't know how long I stayed like that, crouched in the dark, holding my breath. Eventually, the wind softened. Morning light bled through the window. When I finally opened the door, the storm had passed. There were no footprints around the shack, but on the metal siding, from waist height down, were hundreds of thin scratch marks, perfectly parallel, like something tall had dragged its hands along every wall at once. I quit that job the same day. The elevator shut down the following winter after another guard disappeared during a storm. His shack was found unlocked, lights on, radio still humming. Camera 3 recorded something that night. A man standing on the platform, smiling up at the lens, wearing my flannel shirt. I didn't grow up around snow. I was raised in southern Oregon, where winter meant rain and mud, not whiteouts. That's probably why I underestimated it when I moved to Wyoming for work. I was 28 and hauling freight between Cheyenne and a distribution hub near Casper. It was good money, mostly night runs, long stretches of empty highway. The kind of driving where your mind drifts and the road feels endless. The night it happened, I was about 2 hours into my route when the snow started. Light at first, manageable, the kind you don't even slow down for. Then the wind picked up. Within 10 minutes, the road vanished. Lane markers disappeared. The world beyond my headlights collapsed into swirling white nothingness. My GPS froze, then recalculated, then went blank entirely. I pulled over, figuring I'd wait it out. That was my first mistake. The truck rocked as the wind slammed into it. Snow packed itself into every crevice, rattling against the cab like handfuls of gravel. I shut the engine off to save fuel and leaned back, listening to the storm scream. That's when I felt the vibration. Not from the wind, from footsteps. Heavy ones. They moved along the trailer first, slow, deliberate thuds, then stopped near the cab. I leaned forward, squinting through the side mirror. I couldn't see anything, just white. Then the footsteps climbed. Metal creaked as weight shifted onto the steps leading up to my door. I reached for the horn and laid on it, the sound blasting into the storm. The footsteps paused, then continued. A shadow passed over the windshield. Something scraped against the glass, dragging downward in a slow line. I locked the doors. A few seconds later, there was a knock. Not loud, almost polite. I didn't answer. The knock came again, followed by a voice so calm it made my stomach twist. "Hey driver, you alive in there?" I told him to back away. Told him help was on the way, even though I hadn't called anyone yet. He laughed softly. "There's nobody coming," he said. "Storm's too bad." I finally called dispatch. Static answered. When I looked back up, the side mirror was filled with a face. Not pressed against the glass, hovering inches away. His skin was flushed red from the cold, but his eyes were clear, alert, focused on me. Too focused. "You shouldn't have stopped," he said through the glass, his breath fogging the mirror. "They don't like it when you stop." I asked him who they were. His smile widened. Then he stepped back and vanished into the storm. Minutes passed, maybe longer. My sense of time broke down completely. I started the engine again, desperate to leave, but the truck wouldn't budge. The wheels spun uselessly, buried deep. That's when I noticed something in the snow ahead of me. A shape. At first, I thought it was another vehicle. Then it moved. Slowly. Toward me. As it came closer, I realized it wasn't walking. It was being pulled, dragged across the road by something I couldn't see. The shape resolved into a person. Arms limp, head hanging at an unnatural angle. Their boots left deep grooves in the snow as they slid closer and closer to my headlights. I screamed and slammed the horn again. The dragging stopped. The body twitched. Then it stood up, its head snapped upright, eyes locking onto the cab. And then, impossibly, it began running. Not at me, past me. Something massive moved through the storm behind it, invisible except for the way the snow parted around it, following close, fast, hungry. The runner screamed once before both shapes disappeared into the white. I don't remember anything after that, until morning. A state trooper found my truck, half buried but intact. No damage. No tracks leading away. No sign of anyone else ever being there. They told me a man had gone missing on that stretch of highway the same night. When they showed me his photo, my hands started shaking. It was the face from my mirror. Same calm eyes, same smile. They never found him, and I never stopped on that road again. Because sometimes, late at night, when the snow starts falling and the wind howls just right, I still hear a knock in my dreams. Polite, patient, waiting for me to open the door. Every blizzard leaves something behind. Sometimes it's wrecked cars. Sometimes it's missing people. And sometimes it's questions that never get answered. Search and rescue reports will tell you these stories end with exposure, confusion, or bad decisions. But the people who lived through them know better. They know the knocking wasn't the wind. They know the voices didn't belong to anyone trying to help. And they know that whatever follows travelers through the storm doesn't need shelter, because it's already home. So if you ever find yourself alone in a whiteout, and you hear footsteps where no tracks should be, don't open the door. Don't answer the knock. And whatever you do, don't stop moving.